Good evening, and welcome to Cozy Sleep Time. Get comfortable and take a slow breath. Let your body relax more and more. Tonight's story is about the tides. Simply listen, or let your mind drift. There is no need to focus. Let the quiet story begin. Along every coastline of the world, the ocean breathes. It rises and falls in a steady, predictable rhythm, a pulse that has marked time since long before humans walked the earth. This is the tide, the daily rising and falling of the sea. It is one of the most reliable phenomena in nature, and its primary cause is the gravitational pull of the moon. The moon, though it is nearly 250,000 miles away, exerts a powerful force on our planet, tugging at the oceans and shaping the shorelines with every passing hour. Gravity is the force that pulls objects toward one another. The Earth's gravity keeps us on the ground. The moon's gravity, though much weaker, is still strong enough to pull on the Earth. The solid Earth is rigid and does not move much, but the water in the oceans is fluid and responds readily to the moon's pull. On the side of the Earth that faces the moon's gravity pulls water toward it, creating a bulge of water. This is a high tide. On the opposite side of the Earth, away from the moon, a second bulge occurs. This happens because the Earth itself is pulled slightly toward the moon, leaving the water behind. So there are two high tides, one on the side facing the moon and one on the opposite side. As the Earth rotates on its axis, different parts of the planet pass through these two tidal bulges. A given point on the coast will experience two high tides and two low tides each day, roughly 12 hours and 25 minutes apart. The extra 25 minutes comes from the fact that the moon is also orbiting the Earth. By the time the Earth has completed one full rotation, the moon has moved slightly in its orbit, so the Earth must rotate a little further to catch up. This is why the time of high tide shifts by about 50 minutes each day. The height of the tides is not the same everywhere. It depends on the shape of the coastline, the depth of the water, and the geography of the ocean floor. In some places, such as the Bay of Fundy in Canada, the difference between high and low tide can be over 50 feet. In other places, such as the Mediterranean Sea, the tidal range is only a foot or two. The water moves in and out of bays and estuaries, funneled by the shape of the land. In narrow channels, the tide can rush in as a tidal bore, a wall of water that surges upstream against the river current. The moon does not act alone in creating the tides. The Earth's rotation creates a centrifugal force that also contributes to the tidal bulges. And the sun, though it is much farther away, also exerts a gravitational pull on the Earth's oceans. The sun's influence is about half that of the moon's. When the sun and moon align, their combined gravity creates higher high tides and lower low tides. When they are at right angles to each other, their forces partially cancel out, resulting in less extreme tides. Standing at the shoreline, watching the tide come in or go out, one is witnessing the moon at work. The water creeps up the sand, covers the rocks, fills the tidal pools, and then retreats again. It is a slow, patient dance, a movement that is both powerful and gentle. The moon, far away in space, reaches across the void to move the oceans. It is a reminder that we are part of a larger system, connected to the moon and the sun and the turning of the Earth. The tides are the pulse of the ocean, and the moon is its heart. While the moon is the primary force driving the tides, the sun also plays a significant role. Twice each month, when the sun, Earth, and moon align, their combined gravitational pull creates the most extreme tides of the lunar cycle. These are called spring tides. Despite the name, spring tides have nothing to do with the season of spring. The word comes from the Old English word springen, meaning to rise or surge. Spring tides occur during the new moon, when the moon is between the earth and the sun, and during the full moon, when the earth is between the sun and the moon. In both cases, the sun and moon are aligned with the earth, and their gravitational forces work together. During a spring tide, the high tides are higher than usual, and the low tides are lower than usual. The tidal range, the difference between high and low water, is at its greatest. Water rushes further up the beach at high tide, covering areas that are usually dry. At low tide, the water retreats further, exposing parts of the sea floor that are normally underwater. Spring tides are powerful and dramatic. They shape the coastline, move large amounts of sand and sediment, and create challenging conditions for navigation. They also create rich feeding opportunities for shorebirds and marine animals, as the exposed seafloor reveals hidden food. About a week after a spring tide, the moon and sun are at right angles to each other relative to the earth. This happens during the first quarter and third quarter phases of the moon. In this configuration, the gravitational pulls of the sun and moon partially cancel each other out. The sun's pull pulls water in one direction, and the moon's pull pulls water in a different direction. The result is neap tides. During neap tides, the high tides are lower than usual and the low tides are higher than usual. The tidal range is at its smallest. The difference between high and low water is minimal. Neap tides are gentle and subdued. The water does not rise as high or fall as low. The beach changes less dramatically. For swimmers and small boat operators, neap tides often mean calmer conditions and less strong currents. For marine life, the narrower tidal range means less extreme changes in the shoreline environment. Neap tides offer a period of relative stability, a quiet interlude between the powerful surges of the spring tides. The cycle from spring tide to neap tide and back to spring tide takes about 2 weeks, half the lunar month. This cycle can be observed by anyone who visits the coast regularly. 1 week, the tide reaches high up the beach, covering the seaweed line and the rocks. The next week, the tide barely reaches the bottom of the rocks. Watching this pattern unfold over the course of a month reveals the elegant geometry of the solar system in motion. The positions of the sun and moon, traced in the rising and falling of the sea, become visible to anyone who takes the time to look. The terms spring and neap remind us that the tides are not a simple, uniform phenomenon. They are the result of a delicate balance of forces, a celestial dance between the earth, the moon, and the sun. The tides wax and wane in a constant cycle, from the powerful surge of the spring tide to the gentle calm of the neap tide and back again. This rhythm, repeating every 2 weeks, adds another layer to the daily rhythm of the tides, a reminder that nature's patterns are layered and complex, yet always orderly and predictable. Between the highest high tide and the lowest low tide lies a unique and dynamic world. This is the intertidal zone, the area of the shoreline that is alternately covered by water and exposed to the air. It is a harsh and demanding environment where conditions change dramatically with every tide. Yet it is also one of the most biologically productive and diverse habitats on Earth, teeming with life that has adapted to survive in this ever-changing world between the tides. The intertidal zone is divided into distinct vertical bands, each defined by how long it is submerged and how long it is exposed. The highest zone, the splash zone, is only reached by the highest spring tides and by the spray of breaking waves. It is more like a terrestrial environment than a marine one, inhabited by creatures that can tolerate long periods of dryness and exposure to the sun. Here, one might find periwinkle snails, small barnacles, and lichens that cling to the rocks. Below the splash zone is the high intertidal zone, which is covered by water only during high tides and exposed for most of the day. The creatures here must be able to withstand long periods of drying, temperature extremes, and exposure to rain and sun. Barnacles, which cement themselves to the rocks and seal themselves inside their shells at low tide, are common in this zone. So are limpets, small conical snails that clamp down tightly on the rock surface to retain moisture. The middle intertidal zone is covered and uncovered twice each day by the regular tides. This is the most diverse and vibrant part of the intertidal zone. Mussels cluster together in dense beds, their strong threads anchoring them to the rocks. Starfish, or sea stars, move slowly across the rocks and mussel beds, hunting for prey. Anemones, with their waving tentacles, wait for the tide to bring small fish and shrimp within reach. Seaweed and algae, in shades of green, brown, and red, cover the rocks, photosynthesizing during the hours of low tide. The lowest intertidal zone is exposed only during the lowest tides, mostly during spring tides. It is submerged for most of the time. This zone is rich in life that is less tolerant of exposure, including sea urchins, crabs, and larger anemones. The rocks are often covered with a lush growth of seaweed. In tide pools, the depressions in the rocks that hold water even at low tide, a miniature world thrives. Tiny fish, hermit crabs, small shrimp, and colorful anemones live in these pools, protected from the drying air by the water that remains. Life in the intertidal zone requires remarkable adaptations. Animals must cope with crashing waves, which can dislodge them from the rocks. They must survive extreme temperature changes, from the cold of the ocean to the heat of the sun. They must deal with changes in salinity as rainwater dilutes the seawater or as evaporation concentrates it. And they must time their feeding and reproduction with the rhythm of the tides. Barnacles feed by extending feathery appendages when the tide is in. Mussels open their shells to filter plankton from the water. When the tide goes out, they close up tight, waiting for the water to return. The intertidal zone is a place of constant change, a boundary between two worlds. With each incoming tide, the ocean reclaims the shore, bringing food and oxygen. With each outgoing tide, it retreats, leaving behind a world of rock, sand, and pools, waiting for the next return of the sea. The tides are a global phenomenon, but they express themselves differently in every corner of the world. The shape of the coastline, the depth of the ocean, the width of the continental shelf, and even the shape of the seafloor all influence how the tides behave in a given location. Traveling from one coastline to another, one experiences the tides in different ways, from the dramatic to the subtle, from the thunderous to the serene. The Bay of Fundy on the eastern coast of Canada is home to the most extreme tides on Earth. The difference between high and low tide can exceed 50 feet. The bay has a unique funnel shape and a natural resonance that amplifies the tidal movement. The water rises rapidly, flooding the vast mudflats and then retreating, exposing a landscape of rocks, mud, and sea life. The tidal bore, a wave that rushes up the rivers that feed the bay, is a powerful spectacle. Visitors can walk on the ocean floor at low tide and return hours later to find it covered by 30 feet of water. In the British Isles, the tides are also dramatic, especially in places like the Severn Estuary, which has the second highest tidal range in the world. The Severn bore, a tidal wave that surges upstream, attracts surfers who ride the wave for miles. The Channel Islands between England and France also experience extreme tides, with tidal ranges of over 40 feet. The islands are surrounded by strong tidal currents that create dangerous conditions for navigation, but also support rich marine ecosystems. In contrast, the Mediterranean Sea has very small tides. The Mediterranean is connected to the Atlantic Ocean only through the narrow Strait of Gibraltar. This restricted connection limits the flow of water, and the tides inside the Mediterranean are mostly less than 2 feet. The same is true for other enclosed or semi-enclosed seas, such as the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico. In these places, the tides are so small that they are often masked by the effects of wind and weather. The Pacific Ocean has moderate tides along most of its shores, with some notable exceptions. The coast of Alaska, with its deep fjords and complex geography, has a wide range of tidal conditions. The Hawaiian Islands, on the other hand, have relatively small tides, typically around 2 to 3 feet. The islands are volcanic peaks rising from the deep ocean floor, and they lack the broad continental shelf that amplifies tides in other locations. In Southeast Asia, the tides are influenced by the complex geography of the region. The Indonesian archipelago, with its thousands of islands and narrow straits, has a mix of tidal patterns. Some areas have strong tidal currents that are used for generating electricity. The Gulf of Thailand and the South China Sea have moderate tidal ranges, typically around 3 to 6 feet. Along the western coast of Australia, the tides are generally small, around 2 to 3 feet. But on the northwestern coast, in places like King Sound and the Buccaneer Archipelago, the tidal range can exceed 30 feet. These areas are known for massive tidal movements that create powerful currents and dramatic changes in the coastal landscape. Despite these local differences, the fundamental rhythm of the tides is the same everywhere. The same gravitational forces that create the tides in the Bay of Fundy also create the tides in the Mediterranean, just on a different scale. Every coastline feels the pull of the moon. The tides connect all the world's oceans into a single pulsating system, a global heartbeat that reminds us that the waters of the earth are one. The moon is the dominant force behind the tides, but the sun also plays an important part. The sun is much farther from Earth than the moon, about 360 times farther, but it is also much more massive. The sun's gravitational pull on the Earth is actually about 170 times stronger than the moon's. However, because the sun is so far away, the difference in its gravitational pull across the Earth's diameter is smaller than that of the moon. This difference, not the total gravitational pull, is what creates tides. As a result, the sun's tidal effect is only about 46% as strong as the moon's. Even so, the sun's influence on the tides is significant and observable. The most obvious effect is the spring tide and neap tide cycle. When the sun and moon are aligned, either on the same side of the Earth or on opposite sides, their tidal bulges overlap, creating the highest high tides and the lowest low tides. When the sun and moon are at right angles, their tidal bulges are offset, and they partially cancel each other out, creating the smaller neap tides. The sun also contributes to the daily inequality of the tides. In most places, the two high tides of the day are not the same height. One is higher and one is lower. This is because the moon's orbit is tilted relative to the Earth's equator, and the sun's position adds to or subtracts from this effect. The sun can also cause the times of the tides to shift slightly, adding its own rhythm to the lunar rhythm. There is also a seasonal effect on the tides. Twice a year during the equinoxes in March and September, the sun is directly over the equator. At these times, the alignment of the sun and moon can produce especially extreme spring tides, known as equinoctial spring tides. These tides are often the highest and lowest of the year. Coastal communities have long been aware of these seasonal tides, which can cause flooding in low-lying areas. The sun's distance from the Earth also varies slightly over the course of the year. In early January, the Earth is closest to the Sun, a point called perihelion. In early July, it is farthest, a point called aphelion. When a spring tide occurs near perihelion, the Sun's tidal pull is slightly stronger, and the tides are even more extreme. Conversely, spring tides near aphelion are slightly less extreme. Similarly, the Moon's distance from Earth varies, and when a spring tide coincides with the Moon being closest to Earth, at perigee, the tides are especially high. These are called perigean spring tides. The interplay between the Sun and Moon creates a complex but predictable pattern of tides. The tides can be predicted years in advance with remarkable accuracy. Tide tables, which list the times and heights of high and low tides, are essential tools for mariners, fishermen, and coastal planners. These predictions are based on the known positions of the Sun and Moon and the local geography of the coastline. The Sun's role in the tides is a reminder that we live in a system of celestial influences. The Moon and the Sun, working together, shape the oceans. The tides are a tangible connection between the Earth and the sky, a visible expression of the gravitational dance that governs the motion of the planets. When we watch the tide rise and fall, we are watching the Sun and Moon at work, reaching across space to move the waters of our world. The tides are among the most constant and reliable phenomena in the natural world. They have been rising and falling for billions of years, long before any living creature existed on Earth, and they will continue to do so long after we are gone. There is a profound peace in this constancy, a sense of order and predictability that can be deeply comforting in a world that often feels uncertain. The tides are a rhythm that never stops, a pulse that beats without pause, day after day, year after year. The rhythm of the tides is tied to the movements of the Moon and Earth. It is a rhythm that can be observed, measured, and predicted with extraordinary precision. A fisherman in Maine knows when the tide will turn tomorrow. A child playing on a beach in Australia can predict when the water will reach her sandcastle. A sailor navigating a narrow channel can consult a tide table to ensure safe passage. This predictability gives the tides a special quality. They are not random or chaotic. They are orderly. They follow rules. They arrive on schedule. There is a meditative quality to watching the tide. Standing at the shoreline, one can observe the slow, steady advance of the water. It does not rush, it does not hurry. It moves with a patient, unstoppable determination. The water creeps up the sand, covering shell after shell, reaching for the high water mark. Then, after a pause, it begins its retreat. The water slides back, leaving the sand wet and glistening, revealing the treasures of the sea. This slow, patient dance, repeated twice each day, is a lesson in patience and acceptance. The constancy of the tides has shaped human civilization. Coastal communities have learned to live with the rhythm of the tides. Ports and harbors are built with the tides in mind. Fishing boats time their departures and returns to the tides. Farmers in some parts of the world use tidal irrigation to water their crops. The tides have influenced where we build, how we travel, and how we think about time. In many coastal cultures, the tide is as familiar and important as the rising and setting of the sun. The tides are also a source of endless fascination for scientists. They are a complex phenomenon, the result of gravitational forces, the rotation of the Earth, and the shape of the ocean basins. Studying the tides helps us understand ocean circulation, climate change, and the dynamics of the Earth-Moon system. The tides are slowly, imperceptibly, changing the Earth. The Moon's gravity pulls on the Earth, creating tidal friction that is gradually slowing the Earth's rotation and moving the Moon further away. This dance has been going on for billions of years and will continue for billions more. For those who take the time to notice, the tides offer a connection to something larger than themselves. The same water that rises and falls on the shore is part of the same ocean that covers most of the planet. The same moon that pulls the water is the same moon that has guided travelers and inspired poets for millennia. The tides are a reminder of the vast systems that govern our world, systems that are both powerful and gentle, constant and changing. As the sun sets and the tide comes in, the water covers the sand, smoothing away the footprints and the marks of the day. The world is washed clean. The tide turns, and the cycle begins again. There is a quiet reassurance in this endless cycle. No matter what happens in the world of humans, the tides will continue. The ocean will rise and fall. The moon will keep its watch, and the rhythm of the tides, steady and eternal, will play on a lullaby from the deep, constant and true. As our story ends, let the quiet ideas settle softly. Your body can continue to relax, breathing slow and steady. If sleep is near, let it arrive naturally. Thank you for spending this moment here on Cozy Sleep Time. Return anytime for another peaceful journey. Good night.